There are places out here where the land itself just keeps secrets. Things you won't find on any map. I've lived on this reservation for 71 years now. I was born in the exact same room my mother was, in a house my granddad built from timber he cut himself. Trees that were already ancient when he was just a kid. Over the years, you learn to read this place like a book. You notice how the grass bends, or how the creek sounds totally different when the water's hiding something. You ever notice the way the horses go dead quiet before a storm? A storm nobody else can even feel yet. You just get a sense for when things shift. I'm not telling you this story because I want to. I'm telling it because we've got young folks out here who don't know what their grandparents knew. The old warnings kind of got soft somewhere along the line. The elders figured it was kinder to let the kids live without that heavy weight. I get it. I really do. I spent decades believing that myself, but I don't believe it anymore. What I'm about to tell you happened 3 years ago. Say, in a natural American voice, remembering right around the fall, just before that really bad winter freeze we had. It was the year the elk came down from the high country way too early. That should have told us something right there. Because the elk always know. When they move, before the cold even hits, it's not the weather they're running from. My name doesn't really matter. What matters is that I'm what my people call a keeper. Not a medicine man exactly, but something a lot quieter. A keeper is someone trusted to hold the stories that are just too heavy to tell in public. Accounts passed down in private, elder to elder. Stories about what lives out there. Beyond the agreement. The agreement. That's what the old ones call it. It's not a line on a map or a physical fence. It's an understanding between us and what was here first. I first heard that phrase from my grandmother when I was 9. Vivid memory. She looked at me with these dark, careful eyes. She told me that was all I needed to know, at least until I was ready. I didn't hear it again for 20 years. Not until old Raymond Big Horse was dying, and he asked to speak with me alone. That's when it became real. Something with actual weight and shape. The boundary holds as long as we observe certain rules. You don't go near the eastern edge of the reservation after sundowning. You don't call out into that darkness. And you never, ever answer anything that calls back. My grandmother called what lives out there the hungry dark. You don't speak its real name. That's inviting a conversation you can't finish. For most of my life, I treated those warnings with a quiet skepticism. I kept the protocols, sure, but mostly out of habit. Kind of like locking your front door at night. You don't really think someone's out there waiting. But 3 years ago, all of that changed. It started with the dogs. My neighbor Delbert keeps 3 big mixed-breed working dogs. They usually spend their days running the fence lines, barking at the wind. Then, the week before it happened, they just stopped. Not the barking. The dogs themselves. 3 dogs that ranged every inch of this property. Suddenly wouldn't go within 50 yards of the east-facing fence. Delbert brought it up casual-like. He was leaning on the fence, trying to act like it wasn't strange. But you could tell it was bothering him. Dogs don't just change their habits for no reason. I told him it was probably just a smell. A coyote or a cat moving through the brush. Just predator sign. And at the time, I actually believed it. I really thought it was just a coyote spooking the dogs. But then I noticed the birds. The magpies that always roost in that old dead cottonwood out east? They were just gone. They didn't just move to another tree. They vanished. Magpies are stubborn birds, so they don't just leave a roost without a damn good reason. Something told them that tree wasn't safe anymore. That bothered me way more than the dogs did.
I started watching that eastern tree line every single morning.
I'd sit on the porch with my coffee, doing exactly what my dad used to do. I finally understood why he always stared out there. I was looking for whatever the animals already knew was coming. But in the daylight, I couldn't find a single thing. The country looked exactly the same. Dry grass, juniper bushes, and the national forest boundary way out in the back. It looked perfectly normal. And honestly, that's what started feeling so wrong. Then came Thursday night, mid-October. The sky was totally clear, and the stars were so thick they felt like they were pressing down on you. A cold front was rolling in. My joints were aching from the weather, so I couldn't sleep. I went out to the porch around 11 o'clock. I just wrapped myself in a blanket, grabbed some coffee, and watched the sky. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, just enjoying the quiet. And then I heard it, coming from out there in the dark. It was coming from the eastern flats, maybe a quarter-mile out. At first, I swear I thought it was a person. It sounded like someone just having a casual conversation. I sat perfectly still. My first thought was that someone was lost out there. But then the reality hit me like ice water. Nobody from around here would ever walk those flats after dark. The voice didn't get louder, and it didn't get closer. But the rhythm of it changed. It went from sounding like a casual chat to this flat, repetitive chanting. And underneath that chanting, there was something else. A low, vibrating hum that you felt more than you heard. It sounded like something massive, taking a slow, deep breath. I didn't move a muscle. I've been this steady guy my whole life, through accidents and bad news. But sitting right there on my own porch, I was terrified. It wasn't a sudden panic either. It was this deep, heavy dread. The kind of fear where your body recognizes the danger way before your brain even catches up. The old rules started playing on a loop in my head. Don't speak to it. Don't acknowledge it. Don't walk toward the edge. Say, grave warning. And whatever you do, don't answer. So I kept my mouth shut. I sat perfectly still under my blanket, just taking these slow, quiet breaths, trying not to make a single sound. I kept my face turned toward the dark, but I made sure not to look right at it. The old folks always said that giving it your full attention is basically an invitation. That voice kept going for what felt like 15 minutes, just reciting those flat, rhythmic sounds out there in the pitch black, waiting for me to slip up. Then it did the one thing I wasn't ready for. It called my name. Not my everyday name, but the secret ceremonial one my grandmother gave me. Almost nobody alive knows that name. So either this thing had access to some ancient hidden knowledge, or it was literally reaching into my head and pulling it out. I stood up. I won't lie and say I kept it together. My legs were shaking so bad, I could barely feel the floorboards. I went inside. I shut the door as fast as I could. Just needed something solid between me and whatever was out there. I sat down at my kitchen table, turned on every single light in the room. I just sat there in that harsh glare, waiting for the sun to come up. It felt like that night was never gonna end. But eventually, the sky started turning gray in the east. Daylight doesn't fix it, but it changes the rules. In the morning, I walked out to the edge of the property. It didn't go past it, just right up to the line. I needed to see it in the daylight. I was looking for tracks. My rational brain wanted physical evidence. I wanted something normal I could just file away and be done with. But I didn't find tracks. About 15 yards past the fence, there was this circle in the grass. The grass wasn't crushed or burned. It was just gone.
Right in the dead center of that dirt was a stone, a smooth gray river scone. And there ain't a river for miles in any direction.
I knew it wasn't there the week before. It felt too deliberate, like a message.
I didn't touch it. I knew better than that.
I went straight home and made a phone call.
Called a woman I consider my teacher.
She's been holding these stories since before I was even born. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said it in that careful way she has when she wants something remembered exactly.
It's not hunting you, she told me.
It's measuring you. There's a difference. For now. She told me what to do, and I did it. I won't share the specifics, because some of that belongs strictly to our tradition. But it involved placing certain things around the property. And those old protocols I used to follow loosely, I follow them with absolute precision now. Things slowly started to normalize. After about 5 days, Delbert's dogs finally went back to running the eastern fence line. They stopped avoiding that edge of the property. It took a little longer for the birds.
But after 2 weeks, the magpies came back to roost in that old dead cottonwood tree. The unnatural silence finally broke. At the end of the month, I walked out to check that circle in the grass.
It was already filling back in. But that smooth river stone was still sitting right there in the center. I suspect it always will be. I haven't heard the voice again since that night. But I'm not under the illusion that means it's gone.
It's still out there, waiting in the dark.
I want to say this to the young folks here, and to anyone listening from the outside. Anyone who's driven past reservation boundaries on a dark highway at night. You look out at that empty country, and for just a second, you feel like the darkness is looking back. Those old warnings your grandparents gave you, they aren't just stories. They were never just stories. The elders who kept them weren't being poetic. They were being incredibly precise. When they told you to stay away from certain places after dark, they weren't protecting your innocence. They were protecting your life. There's a kind of knowing that keeps you careful, and a kind that comes after it's too late. Over the past year, I've spoken quietly with other keepers across the country. People who hold similar boundaries, similar old agreements. And I found a pattern I really didn't want to find. The agreements are under pressure. They aren't breaking yet. Not completely broken, but they're stressed out. Kind of like how old wood groans right before it snaps. You just gotta know how to look for it. Things are definitely testing the edges out there. I don't know why it's happening now. My teacher says it's cyclical, that the line between our world and theirs just gets thin sometimes. She told me the old ones always knew this would come back around. That's exactly why we have the protocols. The folks still holding on to them are protecting something huge. And I believe her. I actually sleep with the lights off now. I had to force myself to do it, just to prove the fear hadn't completely taken over. But I sure don't go near that eastern property line after sundown. I don't speak into the dark anymore. And I definitely don't answer voices that know way too much. So if you're ever out there in the back country, maybe hiking the national forest, or camping out in the high desert, or those lonesome flats bordering the old reservation. If you find yourself out there after dark, and you hear a voice that sounds almost right, almost human, and it's saying something that sounds an awful lot like your name, don't answer it. That's the whole warning right there. There's really nothing more technical to say about it. Just don't say a word back. Don't look directly at it either. And don't try to convince yourself it's just the nettle, or the wind, or your tired brain playing tricks on you. Because the second you decide it's something harmless, you've already lost.
You've already started doing exactly what it needs you to do. The hungry dark doesn't need an invitation.
It just needs a response.
Any response.
Even silence that's too deliberate, too focused, can be a kind of answer. You gotta learn to be still in a way that's genuinely neutral.
Not dismissive, not afraid. Just utterly and completely unengaged. That's harder than it sounds, especially when it knows your name.
Especially when it's patient. And it is always patient.
That's the thing I think about most in the quiet hours. Whatever is out there, beyond the eastern edge of this land. Whatever presses against the agreement and measures the people within it.
It's not in a hurry. It has no reason to be.
It was here before the roads and the fences and the names we put on the maps.
It'll be here long after.
We're the temporary ones.
The agreement is what makes us temporary on our own terms, rather than something else's.
Hold the protocols. Keep the warnings alive.
Pass them down the way they were passed to you,
in a low voice, to someone ready to hear them when the time is right.
That is why I'm telling you this now.
I sleep with the lights off now. I had to make myself do that. Had to prove to myself that the fear hadn't taken permanent hold. But I don't go near that eastern property line after sundown. I don't speak into the dark. And I sure don't answer voices that know more than they should. If you're out there in the backcountry, out in the national forest, the canyon country, or the lonesome flats bordering old reservation land, if you're out there after dark, and you hear a voice that sounds almost right, almost human, saying something almost like your name,
don't answer it. That is the whole of the warning.
Don't look directly at it. Don't tell yourself it's just an animal, or the wind, or your tired mind playing tricks. The moment you decide it's harmless, you've already begun to do what it needs. The hungry dark doesn't need an invitation. It needs a response. Any response, even a silence that's too deliberate, too focused, can be a kind of answer.
You have to learn to be still in a way that's genuinely neutral.
Not dismissive, not afraid, just utterly and completely unengaged.
That's harder than it sounds.
Especially when it knows your name. Especially when it's patient. And it is always patient. That's the thing I think about most in the quiet hours. Whatever is out there beyond the eastern edge, whatever presses against the agreement and measures the people within it,
it's not in a hurry.
It has no reason to be. It was here before the roads and the fences and the names we put on the maps. It'll be here long after. We're the temporary ones. The agreement is what makes us temporary on our own terms. It doesn't need an invitation. It just needs a response. Any response. Even a silence that's too focused, that's an answer too. You gotta learn to be still in a way that's genuinely neutral. Not dismissive. Not afraid. Just completely unengaged. And that's harder than it sounds. Especially when it knows your name. Especially when it's patient. And it is always patient. That's the thing I think about most in the quiet hours. Whatever is out there, it's not in a hurry. It has no reason to be. It was here before the roads. Before the fences. Before the names we put on the maps. And it'll be here long after. We're the temporary ones. The agreement is what makes us temporary on our own terms, rather than something else's. Hold the protocols. Keep the warnings alive. Don't let them fade out. You gotta protect yourselves. Pass them down the way they were passed to you, in a whisper, to someone ready to hear them, when the time is right. That's why I'm telling you this now. Warning, because the edges are being tested, and you need to know what's waiting in the dark. So If you find yourself out there,
near the edge of the old lands, the dark is always listening. Final warning, just remember, don't answer it.